Hey, Autumn, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, we'll give it a few more minutes, see if anybody else joins us. What I want to accomplish today is I've got a list of some of the special and visual effects stuff that we need to knock out, and so we'll talk a little bit about basically some techniques and how we can do things without going crazy. Okay, so I'm gonna mute my mic again for a few minutes and then see if anybody else shows up. Okay,
Okay.
cool. All right, so are you there?
Yeah, I'm
All right,
here.
we'll go ahead and get started. And if anybody joins in, then they can catch up. What I'm going to do is let me share this document with you. I'm going to open up uh, a Google Docs and I'll take notes on it,
Okay.
and then of some of the stuff that we're talking about, and then I'll go ahead and post it so that you have a list of some of the stuff that we discussed. Okay,
Oh,
hopefully you'll find that helpful. Okay. Um, But before we go there, just wanted to see how you're doing, how you're feeling about the visual and special effects stuff that we've got confronting us in the script. What are your thoughts?
well, my concern is the how are we gonna make it 7 feet, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
monster? That's my concern, and then also the wings.
right.
I
Okay.
don't know how we're gonna do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are very legitimate concerns. And I'm not overly concerned. I've got a couple of ideas that we can talk about today when we get to that scene. Um, I think the broader concern that I have is there's a lot of visual and special effects in the film itself, which means there's a lot of stuff that we kind of have to prioritize. And I've got a schedule that I'm getting pretty close to locking in terms of which scenes are going to be shot when, and that'll give us a better understanding of like a timeline of, okay, we need this by this day, we need this by next day, and we need by this by the third shooting day, and so
Mhm.
we can sort of schedule stuff that needs to be addressed, and then we can figure out what it is we need to get done first. For example, the monster itself, we're not going to need until the next to the last day of shooting. So we've got some time to worry about that. On the other hand, there's a couple of things that, will be coming up on day one that aren't, super difficult, but they do fall within the realm of special and visual effects. And so we want to make sure that we address those first. And so it'll sort of give us a, uh, a way of prioritizing what we need to get done. And so for you guys, I think this is a great opportunity for those of you that are interested in special effects. You kind of learn how the process works of, how do you prioritize, and, there's a lot of stuff that's got to get done. How do you get it done in time to shoot? So what answer me one question. What is your what um hold on, I lost my window here. Hold on a second.
Okay.
What is it that you are most interested in visual effects?
Oh, that's a
I
good
mean, what's your
question.
personal? What is it that you like doing the most? Do you like the special effects where it's like real stuff with special effects makeup? Do you like visual effects where we put like 3D 3D buildings and stuff in? What is it
I like
that
the makeup.
makeup? Oh,
The
great. All right. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to, yeah, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And the way we're going to do some of the makeup stuff is I've already got most of the stuff figured out in my head in terms of either how I've done it before or how I think would be the best way to do it. And so I'll share some of those thoughts with you guys. If you guys have a better way of doing it or have seen some other technique that might work better, then we'll certainly go your direction. But once the part that comes to mind for me is the old age makeup, which we have for Von Ensign in the asylum. Um, I know how we're going to attempt to do it. Uh, and it requires, having our actor do a life cast, and then we do the makeup, and then we cast it in gelatin, and then the day of the shooting, we come in, get him in makeup, and then we shoot from there. But that's going to require, learning. Have you ever done any old age makeup effects?
no, I haven't.
All right, yeah. Have you ever worked with special effects gelatin?
No.
Oh, cool. Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I think, because you're interested in that, um, you can participate as much as you want. And, I can arrange for a day when I do all the stuff on campus. For example, whoever we hire to play Von Ensign, one of the things that they're going to have to commit to is to come in and to sit for a life cast. Have you ever made a life cast for effects, for visual effects?
No. This is all
Yeah.
new to
So
me.
what's that?
This is all new to me.
Cool, that's great. That's makes it even better. And so what we do is we get the actor in the studio, and we make a cast of his head. And then that becomes the base on which we use clay to build the special effects makeup, the old age makeup. And so then we cast it in what's called special effects gelatin, which is basically like jello that you eat for dinner, but it's specially made, and it's really, really strong and durable. And we add, makeup coloring to it to make it look a little more like skin, and then we glue it to their face on the day of shooting and use regular makeup to conceal it. It's a pretty straightforward process. And you're welcome to participate as much as you want in the creation of the prosthetics themselves. And then on the day of shooting, then you'll be working with the makeup artist to make sure everything looks like it's real. But that's sort of one of the things that I'm excited about, because if you're interested in working, on that, you're certainly I'll make sure that we schedule the stuff so that you can participate as much as possible. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so what I'm going to do now is I've got the effects breakdown. When I created the schedule, I went through, and the software that I use is it's industry standard. It's called Movie Magic Scheduling, and it's the same scheduling software that they use for everything from television all the way up to major film productions. And one of the things you can do is you can sort of print out all different types of schedule, the special effects breakdown by day. In other words, it's a list of all of our shooting days, and then it lists out the special and visual effects that we have on that day, so we can sort of schedule and understand what we've got going each day. So let me share that with you.
Okay.
so that you can follow along and we can talk about what we've got going. So can you see that on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we've got here on this left-hand panel is, you see, this is shooting day 1, which we've scheduled for March the 5th. We are shooting the train car scene on that day, and so we don't have any special effects. We don't have any visual effects, but we do have, what I've listed as a mechanical effect, and what that is just sort of simulating the rocking motion of a train car, right? I mean,
Right.
you kind of feel like it's going back and forth. And so, what this would be, I've actually shot some stuff on the inside of a train car that was parked at a siding, at a rail siding. So it wasn't actually moving.
Mhm.
Um, and we had to make it look like it was moving. And so the rocking action of the train car, I built a special platform, a special rig for our camera, and we hung it from bungee cords that were attached to a couple of C stands. And so every time we started rolling film, one of the camera crew would just gently push down on one side of the platform, which would start it rocking back and forth. And then we would start shooting. And so the rocking motion came from the camera, not the train set. And it actually looks completely believable. Right. And so
You're right.
this is, so now for our first day of shooting, I know that we have to come up with this platform. It's really simple. It's just a piece of wood with some hooks and some bungee cords. It's not complicated, but this gives me a way of putting together a schedule to say, okay, this is what we need on March the 5th. You follow?
Yes.
You have any questions about that?
No.
One of the other things that we're going to need is the light coming through light coming through the window, and to make it believable, it's got to feel like the car is moving, which means the light is going to be flickering, uh, as if it's passing, trees and bushes and poles and stuff like that. And so the way we're going to accomplish that is really nothing more than an onset effect, where somebody is going to take a tree branch
Mhm.
and then just wave it in front of the light every now and then, in one specific direction. And it gives the effect of the light passing through trees as you're moving.
Okay.
Okay, and so those are two very simple effects, but I need to make sure that we list them so that we know that we've got it covered, right?
Right.
Then on March 2nd, we've got the flicker of firelight. This is the day that we're shooting the study scene where Von Ensign is meeting with his two professor friends. Um, I think probably the best way to shoot this is to take some different colored orange and red filter gels, cut them into strips, mount them to a piece of wood on one end, and then you take a regular, like a desk fan, and you blow the fan up so that the filter gels are flapping around in the wind of the fan, and then we just shoot a light through there, and that should cast on the walls. Now, I've never done it this way before, so it's something that we want to think about. And so, what we want to do is maybe one day we're going to do a camera test.
Okay. Write this down.
In other words, just simply see if it works, right? I mean, one of the
Right.
things you're gonna find with most visual and special effects is, before you do anything, especially a major, major effect, you're always gonna run tests on the best way to do it. For example, if you're gonna do a blood gag where blood shoots out of a body or something, going through and testing the pressure that you need and the type of blood that you're gonna use and how the prosthetic is gonna be rigged. Those are all really, really important, because when you're on set, really
Mhm.
you got one shot at it. And if you don't get it right the first time, then you don't really have a second chance to reshoot it, because it takes way too much time and way too much expense. So one of the things that we may want to do is, before March the 12th, then just do a real simple test. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just I'll put together the little rig that we want to use, and then make sure that it works, make sure that it gives us the effect that we want. But again, it's really simple. It's not, really crazy. You have any questions about that effect?
No, I don't.
Yeah, and so then on shooting day number 3, we're on March the 19th, we've got this. We don't have any mechanical or special this, this 3D set extension, okay? Do you know what a set extension is?
No.
Okay, it's what we do when, a great example would be if we have a one-story building that we're shooting an exterior, and
Mhm.
we wanna make it look like it's a tall office building, we would add using a 3D program, we would add 4 or 5, floors to that building in post-production using 3D software. It's called a set extension. In other words, we're extending what really actually exists there. And so what I'm seeing here, or what I'm thinking of in terms of this is we're in the newspaper office, which is gonna be in our studio, but what I'm thinking about trying is, um, the office is sort of like a back office, and so there's, like, the outside office would have all of the printing press and all of that stuff, right?
Right.
Um, we're shooting in the sort of see through the doorway going into the front part where the printing press and everything is. We could build a 3D room that we would composite in. So in other words, when we shoot on March the 19th, we would shoot it so that the door in the set was open and we could see our green screen from inside the set. And then that green
Right.
screen we would key out, and then we would put in that 3D outside office to kind of give it that sense that it was in the back of of the um, the back of a newspaper office. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that would be, pretty complex, and the biggest thing to keep in mind about this is gonna require 3D assets, and what that means is we're gonna, somehow we're gonna have to build the 3D models that make it look like it's a room. I don't think it's overly complicated, but I also think, it's something that we need to schedule and think about, right? And the other
Yeah.
thing is we're probably gonna need to, execute a match move when we're on set. Have you ever heard the term match move?
No.
Alright, so what a match move is, anytime you move your camera and you're gonna be shooting something that you need to composite a 3D asset in, meaning, like, let's say I'm gonna put the printing press in the middle of the room,
Mhm.
you have to put up markers so that we can go in with our computer software and match the camera move precisely. In other words, need to be able to make the digital camera in our 3D program do the exact same dolly in. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the background, the 3D models that we put in aren't going to
Mhm.
move in the same way that the camera does, and it's going to look obvious that it's just a composite. What it requires is when we're on set, we need to put in markers, and the markers are just basically just marks on the wall, so that the computer has something to measure to create the camera solution that we would then use in our 3D software. Do you
Okay.
follow that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really crazy complicated, but what that tells me is if we decide to do this, if we decide that we're gonna give this a shot, then
Mhm.
that means that on March the 19th, the special effects team is gonna have to make sure that there's a very specific way. Hey, Roberto, how are you? You there? Roberto just joined us. I'm sure he'll speak up here in a minute. Or
Oh.
is that Bomero? I'm not sure. Um, the the VFX team or the special effects team, you'll have a very specific role on set to make sure that you're doing things like putting the markers in, taking very accurate measurements, taking photographs with a still camera so that we can reconstruct the set in our 3D program. It's and of course, I will walk through you guys with all of that stuff. I'm not going to just say go do it. I've got a visual effects kit that I'll bring in that contains all the stuff that we'll need to make the marks and do all the stuff that we've got to do. But if we decide to go that route, then that's one of the things we're going to need to make sure that we're planning for. Do you have any questions about that, or do you follow that?
I follow.
Okay. Does that sound like something you're interested in?
Of course, yes, I have.
All right, cool. All right. So then on shooting day 4, which takes us to April the 2nd, we've got some special effects and we've got a visual effect. And so now the special effects that we've got scheduled here are rain on the window, a candle flame, and lighting. And before did you get a chance to take a look at the latest copy of the blue pages? The script, I mean?
No.
Yeah, I sent
Which
out a new script. It's the blue pages of the script. You'll see it here. You'll notice at the bottom it says the production draft blue revised February 8th, 2018. So go ahead and get rid of the old one that you had, and then make sure that that this is the one that we're using, because there was a scene that was added, or there was something added to one of the scenes, and that was there's rain on a window. In other words, there's it's raining, because you can't have a good horror movie at least without some rain and thunder and lightning, right? And so in that scene there will be rain on the window. Now this is going to be a practical effect, meaning we'll execute it on set. It's not going to be composited in. And so the best way to do this, or the way that we can do this with the least amount of resist, or the least amount of effort, is I'm going to build what's called a rain box. And that's basically just a big frame with two pieces of plexiglass that fit
Mhm.
on each side of the frame. And then we'll take PVC, put it in the top, and we'll get a very small, like a fountain pump. And then
Yeah.
in the PVC pipe, we'll drill holes in the bottom. And so then that water will be, and we'll angle the window just a little bit, so that when the water comes out of the PVC, it hits the window, slides down the window, and then we shoot through that, and it gives us the shadow effect of the rain on the window. Okay. I mean, it's really
Okay.
pretty simple. But again, this allows me to think about scheduling, about, okay, we've got to make rig built by April the 2nd. Candle flame and the lightning. Lightning is a kind of a tough one. We could do it with a flicker box, which is a special. It's an electronic device that you plug your lights into, and then it makes them flicker like lightning, and or big flashes or whatever. They're really expensive. We don't have one, and we don't have a budget to rent one. And so I'm still a little bit unclear. I don't really know how we're going to pull this one off yet. So I'm going to put a couple of question marks here, because that's something that we're going to, I want to think about and try to figure out how we do the lightning part of it. Right? Do you have any
Right.
thoughts on it? Have you ever tried to create something like that?
I it might seem like a stupid idea, but
Nothing is a stupid idea when you're doing visual and special effects. Trust me, some of the stupidest ideas are the ones that, once made a baby out of old sausages, and it looked really real.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So what's your idea?
Well, I we did it in LED lights.
Uh-huh.
I forgot which ones, but we flashed them on and we flashed it off like at
Right.
certain points to
Yeah,
make
I
it.
mean, absolutely. That definitely might be so I'm gonna add to this LEDs, a couple of question marks. That might be the way to go. So that'll give us a place to start thinking about, okay, if this is going to work. And again, that would be something that we would want to do a real quick test to make sure that it works the way we expect it to, right? And so
Mhm.
then I know that we've got to come back to this as a team and figure out, okay, where do we want to go with that? Okay, but that's a really great idea. I don't think it's a stupid idea at all. I think it's a great starting place, right? And
Yeah.
with the LEDs, they're pretty easy to get to flash. So we can look at that. The biggest concern is the only problem with those is they may not be powerful enough to kind of make it look like it's actual lightning. But we'll figure something out. I'm
Uh,
not all that worried about that. And then the visual effect that we've got is this compositing the moon through the window, right? And so again, it's not really crazy complicated. It's not something that's, we've got to be really crazy with, but we do have to think about this in terms of when we're on set, and in particular the shooting angle. And what I mean by that is when we shoot the foreground action, and what the for you with a compositing shot, when you're putting together a visual effects shot, you've got basically two types of planes. You've got the foreground action, which is usually your actors doing something in front of a green screen. and then you got your background plate, which is usually what you want it to look like they're in front of. And so in this case, the foreground action will be Van Insen in his hotel room looking out the window, right? The
Right.
background plate will be a shot of the moon in the sky. It's very simple, but where people get into problems when they start compositing stuff is the perspective doesn't match. In other words, in the hotel room, we're looking up at a angle of 48 degrees or whatever. We know that because we measured that on our camera when we were shooting on stage, right on set. The camera team did that, and they conveyed that to us, and we filled out our VFX reports that day with a 48-degree camera shooting on a lens of 50 degrees at a camera height of whatever. Remember on Monday I said how important it was to have all of that information in our camera report because the visual effects team needs it. And the reason we need it is because we have to create that exact setup when we film the moon. If we don't, it might have the wrong perspective. And in other words, what's going to happen is the audience is going to look at it and they're going to go, that doesn't look quite right. Most people aren't going to know that the
Right.
perspective is off. They're just going to look at it and go, it doesn't look right. You understand what I mean? And
Yeah.
so when we're on set, we need to be making sure that we're recording the information and working with the cinematographers. And what we'll do is when we get close to these shots that are going to be using some sort of compositing, I'll put together a meeting, or we can do it in class between the VFX team and the cinematography team so that they know what you need. One of the things as a visual effects artist is that's really important is learning how to work with cinematographers. And it's really helpful to work with a cinematographer who understands visual effects because if it's a pretty complicated visual effects, for example, have you seen the movie the show Game of Thrones?
Yes.
All right, so a lot of the stuff that they do in Game of Thrones is visual effects intensive, right? They put that big the dragon and the battle scenes and all of that stuff are pretty much generated VFX. On set, the visual effects team is constantly running around taking pictures and reference material and measurements and stuff like that. And some cinematographers who don't understand why that's important get really pissed because it tends to slow down the shooting. So, working with real closely with the cinematographer is really important to make your job easier. And then in post, it makes the visual effects team their job so much easier, right? And so knowing that on April the 2nd, we're going to be setting up because we're not going to shoot the moon that day, right? We're just going to shoot the interior scenes, the foreground action. And then we could even go out before this and shoot the moon scene, the moon shot, or we could do it afterwards. It doesn't matter. It's just but as long as we know the information, if we shoot it beforehand, then we give that information to the camera team and say, okay, this is how you need to set up your 4 feet off the ground. You need to be on a 50 millimeter lens, and the camera angle needs to be 45 degrees, right? And as we get close to that, I've got a handout that I can give you guys that explains, how you can actually measure this stuff to make sure that it matches precisely. I don't think we need to be that precise for some of these shots, but it's good information for you guys to know if you're interested in the special effects stuff. Does that make sense to you, Autumn?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Hello?
Oh,
Yes, hear me
hey,
now?
is this Roberto?
No,
Or
it's
is this
Bomara.
Balmero? Balmero,
Yeah.
hey, how you doing, man?
I'm
Kind of
doing good.
lurking there. I saw you came in a little earlier. Let me catch you up to speed. What Autumn and I are doing is I've created this breakdown of visual and
Mhm.
special effects by day of shooting. And so what it lists is everything that we need to be thinking about and the date that we need to be thinking about it for. So what we
Okay.
can do is we'll put together a schedule and say, okay, so for example, on April the 2nd, we need to make sure that we've got the rain rig built. Um, the candle flame, I'm not really worried about. We'll probably do that as a practical candle on
Yeah.
set. And then the lighting, Autumn and I were talking about, maybe exploring the possibility of using some LEDs. And then this compositing the moon through the window. We know that we need all of this stuff prepped and ready to go by April the 2nd. And so this breakdown list, which I will be posting on the website so you guys can get a copy of it if you want,
Mhm.
gives us a way of planning for as a visual and special effects team. Some stuff is going to take more work than others. For example, this rain window, this rain box that I'm going
Yeah.
to build, I can build it in an afternoon. No big deal. It's not really complicated. But when we get down here to this old age makeup, that's going to take some work. And as I was explaining to Autumn, you guys as the team are welcome to participate as much as you can. I asked Autumn this, so I'll ask you this: what is it that you're interested in visual and special effects? Are you interested in the on-set practical makeup type effect, or are you interested in like 3D, putting in rocket ships in the background and stuff like that?
I think putting things in the background.
Cool, awesome. Because Autumn is interested in the makeup and on the practical effects, and if you're interested in the VFX stuff, then we'll certainly give you all that you can handle. And as I told
Okay.
Autumn, you are welcome. I will be scheduling. I'll be putting out a schedule of when some of these projects are going to be launching to get the work done. And
Mhm.
if you can help on them, I will welcome you and we'll make sure that we can get it scheduled for you to come in. But if you don't have the time, I already know how I'm going to do most of this stuff. And so I'll take care of it. But I want you guys to know that I want you to be involved as much as involved as you want. Like I was explaining to Autumn that for this old age makeup that we've got going here, that's going to take quite a bit of prep work, and it's going to involve getting our actor in, do a life cast, and then building the prosthetics out of clay, and then casting them in what's called special effects gelatin. It's not something that's beyond our capabilities, but we need
Yeah.
to plan for it. I've got to have a date when, okay, so today is the day we got to get our actor in here to do to sit for his life cast, and then I've got to start building the model that we make the mold from to cast the prosthetics. And if you guys want to come in, and I'll teach you how to do this stuff, if you want. If you can't, or you have a class, or you can't, your schedule doesn't permit, then don't sweat it, because I love this shit and I'm going to do it anyway. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you. Okay. And
Okay.
so it's the same thing with the visual effects, with the compositing and stuff like that. I will teach you guys everything that I know about compositing. I do some 3D work in Cinema 4D, and so I'm not a great modeler. I'm certainly not a world-class VFX guy, but I've done quite a bit, and I know the techniques and the basics, and I'll share them with you guys as much as you want. And so it's nice that you are interested in the VFX, and Autumn is more interested in the special on-set stuff. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay. So,
Okay.
do you have any questions before I keep going, Bomero?
Um, not right now.
Okay, cool. So just pipe in if you do. I mean,
Okay.
don't worry about interrupting me.
Yeah.
All right. And so then we know that April 2nd we need this, and then moving on to April 9th, we don't have any mechanical or visual effects, but we do have this special effect here. Again, the rain on the window, which is great because we'll already have
Yeah.
this rig built, right? The old age makeup, I just talked about all the steps that go into that process. And then the last thing is, of course, we got dead Zeb, right? So I want to throw this out there to you guys. What are your thoughts on how we're going to do dead Zeb in a hat box?
I brought it up with the group last time. I don't know if you saw this. What is it? I think it was Kathy Griffin who created
Oh, the
like
Donald Trump
yeah,
deal?
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of. I was thinking
I
kind
know, yeah,
of
yeah,
like that
yeah.
for the head bugs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a couple of ways we can go on this, and we don't have to decide right away. Um,
Mhm.
there's a there's an easy way. Well, I mean, there's an easier way, and then there's the way that would be more cool and would give us more latitude or a little bit more leeway in terms of shooting. The easy way is when we've got the actor playing Zeb on on set, we
Yeah.
build a hat box rig. In other words, we have a hat box that has a false bottom, and we get the same. Like it'll be sitting on the boards in the hallway, right? That as Von Ensign walks in, and so
Mhm.
we build a rig where the actor can stick his head up through the hat box, and we film it as if we're shooting over. We could even shoot over Von Ensign's shoulder, and we get Zeb in there, the guy who's playing Zeb, and he plays dead, and we shoot that. Right? I mean, that's the very simple way to do it. It would be very effective. It would only take some time on set, and we would have to build and I'll call this the hat box box gag, right? We could do it with a hat box and make it, I mean, that's pretty simple. It's actually an old magician's trick. And it really wouldn't take a lot of extra work. The other way to do it, and the way that would be probably more, it would give us more leeway, or it would give us more options in terms of shooting, is the Kathy Griffith way, and we'll call it the Kathy Griffith way. Right? We're going to do with Von Ensign is to get the actor playing Zeb in, do a life cast of his head, and then cast his head in gelatin, or in FX foam, or like latex foam, and then do the makeup to make it look like him. Okay. It is more, I don't know how to spell her. I guess it's Griffes. You guys know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if I spelled it wrong. It would give us more latitude. In other words, if we decided when we were on set, we wanted to be able to pick the head up and, see the severed head, we could. But it also is this right here. I'm going to put a big old couple of stars by it, because this is pretty complicated. It isn't complicated in the sense that it's a technique that is beyond our capabilities, but when the makeup part of it could be pretty tricky in terms of getting it to look right. The biggest fear that I have with doing it this way is it's going to look like it's a gelatin or a foam head. You see what I'm saying? Whereas with the hat box gag, it is a head, so it's going to look like a head. The biggest concern that I have with that is making sure that we shoot it at the right angle so it doesn't look like a head in a box on top of a table, right? And so what do you guys think about that? I mean, I'm certainly up for the challenge either way. One way it's going to require more prep time. The other way is going to make sure that we work much more closely with the cinematography and the directors. So what do you think? Autumn, you go first.
Do we have time to think about this?
No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Okay.
No, we don't have to. Nothing that we're doing here today makes, we're not deciding anything. This is just about kind of getting the ball rolling so that you guys can be thinking this stuff over. And then, have either of you had a chance to talk to Roberto at all?
No.
Do you know if he's still interested in being on the FX team?
No.
No, we don't know.
No,
okay. All right. Well, hopefully he'll be in class tomorrow, and we can pull him aside and catch him up to speed on what we've got here. If not, you guys and I will pick up the slack and we'll make it happen. And we'll get you guys some t-shirts when we go out to Paramount that say VFX. So you guys are the official VFX team, right? All right. So Autumn, what's your thought? Other than, I mean, we don't have to decide today. Do you have any particular opinions one way or the other?
I'm really into the blood and the guts, so I really want to do the Kathy Griffin way.
Yeah, I know. I am right there with you, Autumn. I love the idea of the Kathy Griffin idea and the ability to make, so that if Von Ensign wants to pick the head up and we can see the veins, and it is a horror film after all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm kind of leaning in that direction. I think my thoughts are, let's see how we move forward with some of this other stuff. And if we have time, then I'm absolutely, maybe what we could do, guys, is we could think about, our goal would be to be able to do the Kathy Griffith method, but have the hat box to that. Yeah. What do you think, Bomaro?
I think we should go with the Kathy, but we could maybe go with maybe a mannequin head.
My concern with a mannequin head is it's going to look like a mannequin head. The hard part is not creating the head. The hard part is getting the makeup right so that it looks like Zeb. But I've already got a couple of makeup artists who are going to be working with us that maybe have some experience in this area, which could could tip the balance in the favor of doing the Kathy Griffith head. Definitely.
Okay.
And so I'm all for a challenge, guys. I would rather do it upright and have, that way when we watch this thing on the screen, we can go, man, you remember that day when we did the Kathy Griffith head? Because that's, for me, that's what some of the fun is, right? And so we'll kind of put a pin in this one and we can think about that. Okay. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
All right. And so then we go to April the 16th. We're off that day, guys. I mean, we're shooting, but we don't have any visual or special effects for that day. So that day we can, you guys can hang out and eat pizza. So then April the 23rd, now we're getting into the big shit, right? Now this is where obviously we've got our work cut out for, and change this to red on the schedule, because that is the deal. And the baby altar we'll do that one also as red. All right, because this is our big day. April the 23rd is the day that we really need to we're really going to need to prep with. And so let's start with the baby, because I think that's probably the simplest part of the gag. I think I have a pretty good idea how we want to do this. Now, obviously, and I think we talked about this either in class or on one of the other chats. I believe that implying stuff is often better than showing it. We're obviously not going to get a little baby, especially a 18-month-old baby, to come on set with us. But we can, and I don't like the idea of showing like a little mannequin baby, because every time I see that in a movie, I'm like, oh, that's so cheesy. That looks like a toy baby. And so I'm not a big fan of that. But I think what we could get by with, guys, is the way the scene is written. And again, this will come down to working with the director and the cinematographer in terms of how we're going to block this out. Because if we shoot it really creatively, we can shoot it so that all we see is maybe an arm or a leg, right? The baby's leg is sticking out of the little wrapped, the cloth, the red cloth that it's wrapped up in. And it's a whole lot easier to create a baby's leg than it is to create the whole baby. And it would be a simple matter of doing it out of special effects gelatin. And I have Bomara, have you ever messed around with effects gelatin?
No, never.
Actually, I'll bring some in. I'll bring some in when we come to class tomorrow, and I'll let you guys see what it looks like.
Okay.
It can look really freaking real. It's very, very realistic. And so the idea that I have is maybe do a cast, get an actual baby doll that looks pretty realistic in terms of its dimensions, and do a cast of that, and cast the legs or an arm in gelatin that could actually stick out of the blanket. And the way the gelatin behaves, it's very flexible. It looks like skin, it feels like skin, and it'll freak people out if they think, they're going to think it's a real baby. And so that's really simple. I don't really think that's going to be a big issue. And then again, the follow-up part of that will be, this is going to be about creative shooting and FX gelatin baby legs. And so I think that, I think as far right now, I'm leaning towards doing it this way, because it can give us, it'll certainly, it'll hint enough to the audience without making it clear that it's not a real baby. But by the same token, it'll be nice to be able to show the baby's leg, because that, the audience is going to go, holy shit, did they get a real baby?
So are we gonna add sound to the baby?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All of the post-production sound stuff we'll put the sound in. All of that stuff goes in after the shoot. None of these sound effects and stuff go on, are going to happen on set. Now, we may have some cue sounds for example, if something has to happen when a sound occurs, for example, a good example of this would be in this scene, actually, where Von Ensign is seen, where the monster sees him. Yeah. So basically the way I think it will work in the script is Von Ensign drops the stone. Yes. and
Yes.
then that causes a noise. Well, on set, we will just say, okay, stone noise, which is the verbal cue for the monster to look up at Von Ensign or the people to turn and look. In post, we'll actually put in the sound of a stone dropping, right?
Okay.
To cue it. And so all of the sound stuff, like the baby crying and the sound of the monsters eating the baby or whatever it is, will all be post-production dubbed in. Okay. Does that make it more sense to you?
Yes.
Or does that sound about right? Okay. All right. And so then the big one is the creature. All right. And so there's some
I started.
some new stuff. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I started sketching some of the creature out.
Awesome.
I'm not sure how we're going to be able to bring it to life because it kind of looks like the creature you're describing in a way.
Right.
Except I made the tongue look like a one of the DC
serpent
Marvel creatures.
Okay.
I'll bring it in Monday to show you. And
yeah, that'd be cool. If you want, you can email it to me. If you could scan it and email it to me, or take a picture on your phone, that way I can post it to the rest of the class.
Okay, because I have two ways of doing the eyes. Either right now it's still in sketch form, but it looks very like the eyes look very wiggly and weird.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, cool. That sounds really cool. The way I think that the way that we can approach the creature in terms of creating it, once we get sort of like a design that is finalized, and and the directors are happy with it, and we're happy with it, of course, then we can start. The best way to go about it will be the same way I had been talking about before, where whoever ends up playing our creature, we do a cast of their face, and then we build this prosthetic makeup using whatever, depending on how this thing ends up looking. We could do it with special effects gelatin, we could do it with silicone, we could do it with foam, or any number of other different techniques. But I think the design of the creature is going to be important, and then the rest of the building of it is just really pretty straightforward, where we take the model's head and then we build it up using clay and other items that we can then make a positive mold from, and then we cast whatever pieces of foam need to go on the face or the jaw, or we can create the tongue or whatever it is, and then the horns, and all of that stuff ends up being makeup that we glue on to the actor. Does that sound like we're on the right track, or does it sound like we're on the right track to you?
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of, you had asked me earlier, how are we going to make this like an 8-foot tall creature? Again, the height, there's a couple of things that I've been kind of tossing around in my head. The first, of course, is my go-to is always creative shooting. In other words, we're going to work with the director and the cinematographer to make sure that we're shooting at an angle that emphasizes, let me make this font smaller, this is too big. We're going to emphasis on height. So in other words, we're probably going to shoot from a low angle, right?
Okay.
In other words, we're going to be from below eye level, because that's going to make it look even taller. And then the second thing we can do is we can put the rest of the actors on their knees, right? And just shoot from the waist up, right? That's going to help make it taller. Yes. Sort of almost like a forced perspective kind of thing. And then the last thing that I was thinking, so we do forced perspective. Have you guys seen the Lord of the Rings deal?
Yes.
Do you know about how they did the forced perspective in that? Did you see the behind the scenes on it?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you should Google, if you Google Lord of the Rings and forced perspective, there's a couple of really great behind the scene videos that explains. Do you guys know what forced perspective is?
No.
Okay, forced perspective is where you arrange your actors in relationship to the camera to how do I want to say this, to make them look different sizes. So for example, if you want one of the characters to look really, really tall and the other character to look like Bilbo Baggins, you're going to put the tall character closer to the camera and put the short character further behind. And so what Peter Jackson did for all of those scenes where who's the wizard guy? The
Um,
where Bilbo,
Gandalf.
yeah, where Bilbo had to act next to Gandalf, who was supposed to be much taller than Baggins. They built these really, really elaborate sets where all of Bilbo Baggins things like the spoons and stuff like that were big, and all of the ones for Gandalf were small. And then they put Gandalf way closer than Bilbo, and so on camera it looks like he's really, really big. It's called forced perspective. If you Google forced perspective um, and Lord of the Rings, there's a couple of good videos on there. They explain it way better than I could possibly explain it.
Mm-hmm.
So we can rely a little bit on that as well. But the other thing I'm thinking is maybe if we feel really bold, we could build a platform with some hydraulics. In other words, we take the concept of putting a person on an apple box to the next
Mm-hmm.
level, where we build a platform stage that will be behind the altar, and then it's got a hydraulic. Think about like a jack in a mechanic's garage, right, where it lifts the car, where you fill it with hydraulic fluid and the platform raises up, right? And so now we put the actor in costume on that platform. We trigger the hydraulics and the platform raises up, say, like a foot and a half. It doesn't have to raise up 10 feet or whatever, but then that just kind of gives that sense that the character's growing, right? That might be a really cool gag to kind of simulate the feeling of height. What do you guys think?
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and then of course with the costume, it's just going to be a big gown, kind of a big gown sort of thing. We can cover all of the apparatus with that. So that's definitely some. I'm going to put a couple of question marks there because that's something we might want to think about whether or not it's worth the effort, because it would require some work, but it might
Mm-hmm.
actually be worth it to give us a pretty cool effect. What do you think, Bomaro? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like the hydraulics might take up too much time.
You think
Depends.
too much time in terms of build time or too much time in terms of set time?
I think build time, maybe.
Okay, all right. So we'll put a pin in that. We
Yeah.
can certainly could be something we would think about. You may be absolutely right where we want to, one of the things that, because we've listed, we've got quite a few things here that we've got to look at. For us, we want to make sure that we are getting the most bang for our buck, right? And while this hydraulics thing would be really cool,
Yeah.
we may not want to go there because we would rather spend more time doing the Kathy Griffith head, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's going to give us more on-screen production value, right? The people are going to be going, "Oh my God, that's a really cool head." Whereas this platform gig, they're not even going to notice it. They're just going to go, "Oh, the guy's tall." You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely something to think about. I would tend to agree with you on that, Bomaro.
Yeah.
Okay, any other thoughts on that?
I think that's it for now.
Okay. And so then the last thing I've got here is this on the
Train.
last day of shooting, April 30th. This is the day we're out at Paramount. We don't have any special and mechanical effects, although we do, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But there's the script calls for Von Ensign and Emma to be at the train platform. Have you guys ever seen any of the pictures online of Paramount where we're going to be shooting? Have you ever been out to Paramount?
No.
Okay, it's really pretty cool. I actually, when we get closer to going out there, I'm going to try to arrange a location scouting day where anybody that's available can meet with me out there, and we'll walk around and talk about stuff that we're going to set up. It'll be just an extra day if you're available. If you're not, it's no big deal. I'm going to do it anyway because I just want to make sure that I've got all. It's kind of the thing that a producer does to make sure that we've got everything taken care of. Plus, I have to meet with the National Park Service to go over their rules about how we can shoot. But this Southern Pacific train, it's a platform. That platform is pretty cool, but I've always wanted to put a train at the platform when somebody's there, right? And since we don't really have a budget to, have them bring in a steam locomotive, I'm toying with the idea of doing this as a green screen with 3D model train in post. Okay, and what I
Mhm.
mean by that is shooting it so that some part of the scene has a green screen. It would be sort of like a set extension, right? Where we composite in the train afterwards. Um, the biggest hurdle or the biggest thing that we need to think about is the shooting plan. Because the way we shoot it, in other words, the camera angles that the director uses and how we block the actors in relationship to the green screen and where we plan the train to be, has to be planned out in advance. In other words, we need to make sure that we know exactly where the actors and the camera are going to be, because as a VFX team, we need to know exactly the perspective of where this train's going to be and where the green screen needs to go, so that we can do an easy key and pull the key to put the train in there. Right. And so I'm leaning towards saying that that is going to be um, something that I would love to accomplish. What are your thoughts on that? You,
Um,
you up for that, Bulmaro?
yeah, but I had a question. You know how you said about the force perspective makes
Yeah.
things look
Uh-huh.
taller, right? Is
Yeah.
it possible to make like get like a somewhat of like a realistic toy train and maybe do it like that?
Oh, absolutely. No, that's not actually that's actually a really good idea. One that would be that's an exact perfect use of force perspective with miniatures.
Ah,
And that is definitely something that we should explore.
okay.
It does a couple of things for us. Number one, real trains are always better than fake trains.
Hmm.
Um, but it also removes a whole lot of work in post production. In other words, nobody's got to go in and pull the key. Nobody's got to create the train. Nobody's got to do the lighting and all of that stuff that goes with it.
Yeah,
So that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea. And I think, if we are going to do that, we still need to be very sure about the shooting plan, because the director
yeah,
and the cinematographer are going to have to shoot it, or they're going to have to block out the scene so that it looks like it's going to, because the forced perspective is something
hmm,
that we have to plan very, very carefully in advance, because you got to have certain measurements. There's got to be certain, it's not it's definitely something that we can do. I've done some very simple force perspective work like that in the past, where I
yeah,
composited in a police car in a scene, or didn't composite it. We shot it live on set, but it was done through force perspective.
okay,
The biggest thing to be the biggest thing to keep in mind about force perspective is it has to be a really realistic
yeah,
looking
detailed,
train.
yeah,
Sorry, my fingers aren't working properly today. Really realistic looking train model, and the bigger the model, the
the
better,
better.
right? And
Yeah.
so, using like an old little like a model train from a railroad train set
Hmm.
might work, but if we could get something that was bigger. So, for example, there are a lot of miniatures used in old war movies, right?
Yeah.
An example would be not even old war movies, even modern war movies. In Dunkirk, I believe they used a bunch of miniatures. But um, when they use, let's say they're using a miniature battleship, which in the real world, that miniature battleship is going to be 3 football fields long, right?
Yeah.
The model for that battleship was like 46 feet long, right? It's not a tiny little model like you can go down to the model store and buy.
Yeah.
Not that we are going to be building like a 12-foot model train, but keep in mind that the bigger the model we can get, the more realistic it's going to look. But it's definitely something that I would love to explore. So I'm going to underline this, And Bomaro, if you want to start this week, maybe exploring where we might get a model train, right?
Okay.
Do you have some places in mind, some ideas in mind?
Um.
If you don't, that's no
No.
big deal. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know if maybe
Alright.
you suggested it because you had thought of
Yeah.
something. Okay.
No.
Autumn, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I have no idea how we're
You have
gonna
no idea.
go from there.
Okay. All right. No, that's no problem. You don't have to have any idea. All right. So we're gonna have to wrap this up because I've got the next chat coming up. But
Alright.
I'm going to post all of this stuff on the website so you guys can download this. What we can do this coming week is I'm going to put together sort of like a production construction schedule of what I think needs to be started when. Like for example, this rocking action on the train, as I explained to Autumn before you joined us. I've done something like this before. It's real simple, but making sure that it's put together before we have to shoot on the 5th. So I'll pick a date when I need to start doing this. And then that date, that list, that construction list will be something that I'll share with you guys. And then anything that you want to get involved in, you'll know when that stuff is happening. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes.
Okay, so before I wrap with you guys, again, thank you so much, guys, for hanging out and giving some of your time.
No problem.
Are you guys excited about the visual and special effects stuff we're going to be doing?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty pumped myself. I really love this stuff. And I think that, some of the stuff that we're going to do is going to make this really cool for the movie. And I think everybody's going to be pretty stoked about it.
All right.
Okay, guys. I am going to wrap up now so I can join the next production meeting. I'll see you guys tomorrow, man. Have a good the rest of your weekend.
You
Alright,
too.
you too, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.